The rolling hills of rural Wisconsin stretched endlessly beneath the summer sun, painted in shades of green that spoke to the quiet beauty of America's heartland. For decades, families had built their homes among these wooded valleys, carving out peaceful existences where the biggest concerns were crop yields and weather patterns. It was a place where people still left their doors unlocked and children played freely in backyards that bordered pristine forests. But by July 2025, something had changed in these tranquil woodlands. The black bears that had always inhabited the region were venturing closer to human settlements, their behavior becoming increasingly unpredictable as their natural habitat shrank and food sources dwindled. What had once been rare sightings were becoming weekly occurrences, and the invisible boundary between human civilization and wild territory was dissolving with each passing day. Karen Fry had lived in her rural Comstock home for years, growing accustomed to the occasional bear wandering through her property. At 69, she had developed the kind of practical wisdom that came from decades of country living, understanding that respect for wildlife meant giving dangerous animals plenty of space. She had seen bears before, watched them from her windows as they foraged at the forest's edge, and had always felt secure in the knowledge that they typically avoided human contact. But on this particular July afternoon, that assumption would prove catastrophically wrong. The attack came without warning as Karen stepped outside her home to tend to her garden. She had no way of knowing that a black bear with a cub was already on her property, hidden among the trees that bordered her yard. The mother bear had been foraging for food when she detected the human's presence, and her protective instincts immediately identified Karen as a potential threat to her offspring. The bear's charge was swift and devastating. Karen barely had time to register the massive black shape exploding from the tree line before 300 pounds of muscle and bone slammed. It happened. The bear retreated toward the tree line, but remained on her property, pacing among the shadows as if deciding whether to finish what it had started. With tremendous effort and willpower, Karen managed to crawl toward her house. Every movement sent waves of pain through her injured body, and the blood loss was making her lightheaded. But survival instinct drove her forward, even as she could see the bear still moving through her yard, just yards away. She had dropped her cell phone during the attack, but somehow managed to reach her landline inside the house. Her hands were shaking and slick with blood as she dialed 911, each number requiring enormous concentration as shock and trauma clouded her thinking. When the emergency dispatcher answered, Karen's voice was remarkably steady despite her injuries. "I was just attacked by a bear and I need some help," she said, the simple statement carrying the weight of a nightmare that had just become reality. The dispatcher's surprise was audible. Bear attacks were virtually unheard of in this part of Wisconsin, and the call seemed almost surreal. "You were attacked by a bear?" the dispatcher asked, seeking confirmation of something that seemed impossible. "Yes," Karen confirmed, her voice growing weaker as blood continued to flow from her wounds. As she waited for help to arrive, Karen's primary concern wasn't for her own injuries, but for her missing dog. "I think I'm bleeding, and my dog is missing. The bear is running around my yard," she told the dispatcher, her maternal instincts extending to the animal that had been her constant companion. The dispatcher tried to keep Karen talking, while emergency responders raced toward her rural location. "Where are you bleeding from?" the operator asked, trying to assess the severity of her injuries. "Everywhere. My arm, my leg, my head," Karen replied, her voice beginning to reflect the reality of her situation. "Oh my gosh, I'm dripping blood everywhere."
I was attacked by a bear.
You were attacked by a bear?
Yes.
Do you need an ambulance?
I need something. I'm bleeding and my dog is missing. Daisy, where are you?
The bear remained on her property during the entire 911 call, visible through her windows as it continued to patrol the area where the attack had occurred. The animal's behavior suggested it was still agitated and potentially dangerous to anyone who might approach the scene. Sheriff's deputies arrived within minutes, their body cameras capturing the tense moments as they searched for the aggressive bear that had mauled an elderly woman in her own yard.
You know where this bear is?
It's in the backyard, she said.
Okay. Dogs are in the house?
No, there's one dog that's still running around.
Does it have an orange vest on?
Yeah.
He was at the end of the road. Okay. You might hear a gunshot, but if did she get bit? Because we're gonna have to. Okay. Was it just one bear?
Yeah, all right. Yep.
Okay.
The officers moved carefully through the property, weapons drawn, knowing they were dealing with a predator that had already demonstrated its willingness to attack humans. They found the bear approximately 100 yards from Karen's house, still on her property and showing no signs of leaving the area. The animal's behavior was unlike typical black bear encounters. Instead of fleeing when confronted by humans, it held its ground with the confidence of a predator that had established dominance over this territory. The deputies fired 3 shots, their weapons echoing across the rural landscape as they attempted to eliminate the immediate threat to Karen and any other responders who might need to access the scene. The bear disappeared into the dense forest, but whether it had been killed or merely wounded remained unclear. Karen was rushed to the hospital with severe injuries to her arms, legs, and head. The attack had left her with deep lacerations that required extensive medical treatment, but she was alive and conscious, a testament to both her resilience and the bear's decision not to deliver a killing blow. Medical personnel who treated her were amazed by her composure during the ordeal. Despite suffering what could have been fatal injuries, she had maintained enough presence of mind to reach safety and call for help. Her survival was a combination of quick thinking, determination, and the kind of rural toughness that came from decades of country living. The search for the bear continued for 2 weeks after the attack, with Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources personnel establishing traps and conducting round-the-clock surveillance of Karen's property. Randy Johnson, a large carnivore specialist with the DNR, coordinated the effort to locate and euthanize the animal responsible for the attack. During the search, they trapped and released multiple bears, 2 male black bears, 2 yearling bears, and 2 adult females, but none matched the behavioral profile of the animal that had attacked Karen. The bear that had mauled her seemed to have vanished completely, disappearing into Wisconsin's vast forests where it could continue to pose a threat to other humans. After 2 weeks of round-the-clock surveillance on the property and no additional signs of the sow involved, our current options are exhausted, Johnson announced when the search was finally called off. The bear and her cub had apparently left the area, but their current location remained unknown. The incident sent shockwaves through Wisconsin's rural communities, where black bear attacks were virtually unprecedented. The state was home to an estimated 24,000 black bears, but they typically avoided human contact and had never been responsible for a fatality in recent memory. Karen's attack represented a disturbing shift in bear behavior that wildlife officials struggled to explain. Local residents reported increasing bear sightings in the months leading up to the attack. In the summer, I'd say at least once a week you'd see one, a 10-year resident of Comstock told reporters. They're usually afraid of people. You kind of get used to it after a while. But this bear had shown no fear of humans, attacking aggressively in broad daylight and maintaining its presence on Karen's property even after the assault. The animal's behavior suggested either extreme hunger or a fundamental change in how some bears were responding to human presence. Wildlife experts pointed to habitat loss and climate change as potential factors in the increasing frequency of human-bear encounters. As forests were cleared for development and weather patterns altered traditional food sources, bears were being forced into closer contact with human settlements. The result was a dangerous collision between suburban expansion and predatory instinct. Karen's dog Daisy was eventually found and treated by a veterinarian, suffering minor injuries, but surviving the encounter that had nearly killed her owner. The animal's recovery provided one bright spot in a story that had traumatized an entire community. The attack highlighted the growing challenges of managing human-wildlife interactions in areas where suburban development was encroaching on traditional bear habitat. Wisconsin's black bear population was healthy and expanding, but their increasing proximity to human settlements created conditions where violent encounters became more likely. Karen's remarkable composure during her 911 call became a testament to the kind of strength that rural Americans drew upon in moments of crisis. Despite suffering potentially fatal injuries, she had maintained enough clarity to seek help and provide crucial information to emergency responders.
I was attacked by a bear.
You were attacked by a bear?
Yes,
Do you need an ambulance?
I need something. I'm bleeding and my dog is missing.
Her survival was a combination of courage, determination, and pure chance. The bear responsible for the attack was never found, leaving questions about its current location and potential for future encounters with humans.
You know where this bear is?
It's in the backyard, she said.
Okay. Dogs are in the house?
No, there's one down there still running around, I guess.
Does it have an orange vest on?
Yeah.
He was at the end of the road. Okay. You might hear a gunshot, but if did she get bit? Because we're gonna have to. Okay. Was it just one bear?
Yeah, all right. Yep.
Okay. He turned like right when I hit that tree, I'm pretty sure, but the second shot I think I got him.
Wildlife officials continued to monitor the area, but the vast forests of northern Wisconsin provided countless hiding places for a predator that had proven its willingness to attack humans without provocation.
If anything, I probably didn't kill him. I wounded him because there was back shot. Well, I see something black, but there's no way that my gun dropped him.
The incident served as a stark reminder that Wisconsin's rural areas remained genuinely wild places where natural processes continued, according to rules that had nothing to do with human safety or convenience. The bears that inhabited these forests were not the diminished, habitat-restricted animals found in many other states. They were healthy, well-fed predators living in prime habitat where they had few natural enemies. Karen's recovery would take months, but her survival stood as proof that even the most violent encounters with nature's predators could be survived through preparation, quick thinking, and sheer determination. Her story became part of Wisconsin's growing collection of human-wildlife encounters, each incident adding to the accumulated knowledge about predator behavior and survival techniques. The bear that had attacked her continued its existence somewhere in Wisconsin's wilderness, unaware of the human drama it had created and unconcerned with the ongoing discussions about wildlife management and public safety. For the animal, the encounter had been a routine response to a perceived threat, just another day in an environment where survival required constant vigilance and immediate action. The quiet forests of Wisconsin continued to harbor creatures capable of transforming peaceful rural life into scenes of violence and terror, reminding all who lived there that the boundary between civilization and the wild remained fragile and easily crossed by predators that recognized no human authority. 2 months after Karen Fry's harrowing encounter, another family would discover that black bears were expanding their range throughout the Midwest, bringing predatory violence to communities that had never before experienced such encounters. The Morrison family had moved to their dream property outside Hayward, Wisconsin, just 6 months earlier. Jim and Susan Morrison, both recently retired from careers in Minneapolis, had purchased 40 acres of wooded land where they planned to build a cabin and enjoy the peaceful retirement they had worked decades to achieve. Their property bordered the Chequamegon National Forest, offering direct access to thousands of acres of pristine wilderness that seemed perfect for hiking, birdwatching, and photography. The couple had spent their first summer clearing trails and establishing a small campsite where they could stay while planning their permanent residence. They had seen evidence of wildlife during their time on the property: deer tracks, turkey feathers, and the occasional glimpse of smaller mammals moving through the underbrush. But they had never encountered anything larger or more dangerous than a curious raccoon investigating their food supplies. That changed on a humid August evening when Susan was walking their golden retriever, Max, along one of the trails they had cut through the forest. The dog had been ranging ahead as usual, following scents and investigating the rich ecosystem that surrounded their property. The black bear emerged from a dense thicket just 20 yards ahead of them, its massive bulk blocking the narrow trail they had been following. Susan's first instinct was to call Max back to her side, but the dog had already detected the bear's presence and was barking aggressively at the intruder. The bear's response was immediate and terrifying. Instead of retreating as Susan expected, the animal charged toward them with shocking speed. Its massive paws thundered against the forest floor as it closed the distance between them, its black eyes fixed on the dog that had dared to challenge its presence. Susan screamed for Jim as she tried to pull Max away from the approaching predator, but the dog's protective instincts had taken over. The golden retriever positioned himself between his owner and the bear, barking furiously at an animal that outweighed him by more than 200 pounds. The collision between dog and bear was brief but devastating. The bear's massive paw swatted Max aside with enough force to send the dog flying through the air, his body crashing into a tree with a sickening impact. The animal's yelp of pain echoed through the forest as he fell motionless to the ground. With the dog eliminated as a threat, the bear's attention turned to Susan. She had perhaps 3 seconds to act before the predator reached her, and her options were limited to fight or flight in an environment where she had no chance of outrunning her pursuer. Jim's arrival came at the crucial moment. He had heard Susan's screams and was crashing through the underbrush toward them, carrying the camping axe he had been using to clear fallen branches from their trails. His appearance caused the bear to pause, its massive head swinging between the two humans as it assessed this new threat. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours to the terrified couple. The bear stood on its hind legs, revealing its full 6-foot height and the massive claws that could disembowel a human with a single swipe. Its breathing was audible in the sudden silence, a sound that would haunt their dreams for months to come. Jim's decision to advance toward the bear while shouting and waving the axe was pure desperation. He had no training in wildlife encounters and no real understanding of black bear behavior, but his protective instincts demanded action even when logic suggested retreat. The bear's response surprised everyone involved. Instead of attacking or retreating, the animal simply turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest as suddenly as it had appeared. The encounter was over, leaving behind a scene of destruction that would forever change the Morrison family's relationship with their wilderness property. Max survived the bear's attack, but suffered internal injuries that required emergency surgery at a veterinary clinic in Hayward. The dog's recovery took weeks, and he never again showed the same enthusiasm for exploring the forest trails that had been the scene of his near-death experience. The Morrisons reported the incident to Wisconsin DNR officials, who conducted an investigation but found no trace of the bear responsible for the attack. The animal had vanished into the vast wilderness of the Chequamegon National Forest, where it could continue to pose a threat to other hikers and campers. The encounter forced the couple to completely reassess their retirement plans. The peaceful wilderness retreat they had envisioned was revealed to be habitat for predators that showed no fear of humans and were willing to attack without provocation. Their dream of living in harmony with nature had been shattered by a few moments of violence that demonstrated their true position in the forest's hierarchy. Wildlife officials used the Morrison incident to emphasize the importance of proper precautions when living or camping in bear country. The couple's lack of preparation, no bear spray, no noisemakers, no understanding of proper behavior during encounters, had contributed to the dangerous situation they faced. The bear that attacked them was never located, despite extensive searches by DNR personnel. The animal remained somewhere in Wisconsin's forests, its behavior having crossed a line that made it dangerous to any humans who might encounter it in the future. Jim and Susan Morrison eventually sold their property and abandoned their plans for a wilderness retirement. Their brief encounter with a black bear had taught them that some dreams came with prices they were unwilling to pay, and that the boundary between human civilization and predatory reality was far thinner than they had ever imagined. 3 weeks later, a solo backpacker in Minnesota's Boundary Waters canoe area would learn that black bears were becoming increasingly aggressive throughout the upper Midwest, their behavior shifting in ways that wildlife experts struggled to understand or predict. Dr. Sarah Chen, a biology professor from the University of Minnesota, had been conducting research on forest ecosystems in the Boundary Waters for over a decade. Her solo camping trips were legendary among her colleagues, combining serious scientific work with the kind of wilderness skills that came from years of experience in remote areas. She had established her research camp on a small island in Knife Lake, choosing the location for its isolation and the rich biodiversity that made it perfect for her studies of climate change impacts on northern forest ecosystems. The island was accessible only by canoe, and she had seen no other humans during her week-long stay. Her research focused on documenting changes in plant and animal populations that might indicate broader environmental shifts. She had been photographing and cataloging species for 6 days when she noticed signs that a large animal had been visiting her campsite during her absence. The evidence was subtle, but unmistakable to someone with her training. Disturbed vegetation around her food storage area, scratch marks on trees, and scat that indicated a black bear had been investigating her presence. The signs suggested the animal was becoming increasingly bold in its approach to her camp. Dr. Chen had followed all proper protocols for camping in bear country. Her food was stored in bear-resistant containers suspended from tree branches well away from her tent. She had maintained a clean campsite with no food odors that might attract wildlife. Her years of experience had taught her to respect the predators that shared these wilderness areas. But this bear seemed different from others she had encountered during her research career. Instead of avoiding human presence, it appeared to be actively investigating her campsite with the kind of persistence that suggested either extreme hunger or a fundamental change in behavior patterns. The attack came on her final night on the island, when she was sleeping in her tent after a day of intensive data collection. She woke to the sound of something large moving through her campsite, investigating her equipment and testing the security of her food storage. Through the thin fabric of her tent, she could see the massive silhouette of a black bear just feet away from where she lay. The animal was methodically exploring every aspect of her camp, its massive bulk moving with surprising stealth as it searched for anything edible. Dr. Chen's training told her to remain still and quiet until the bear lost interest and moved on. Black bears were typically more interested in food than in humans, and most encounters ended peacefully if people avoided provoking defensive responses. But this bear's behavior was unlike anything she had experienced in years of wilderness research. Instead of focusing on her food storage area, the animal seemed drawn to her tent itself, approaching closer than any wild bear should to a human shelter. The bear's investigation of her tent became increasingly aggressive. Massive claws raked across the fabric, opening tears that revealed glimpses of fur and muscle just inches from her sleeping bag. The animal's breathing was audible through the thin barrier, a sound that triggered every survival instinct her body possessed. When the bear began trying to enter her tent, Dr. Chen knew she had to act. She had bear spray within reach, but deploying it inside the confined space would be as dangerous to her as to the bear. Her only option was to exit the tent and face the predator in open ground, where she might have room to maneuver. The moment she unzipped her tent door, the bear's attention focused on her with laser intensity. The animal was massive, easily 300 pounds of muscle and bone that could kill her within seconds if it chose to attack. Its black eyes reflected her headlamp beam as it assessed this new development in its investigation. Dr. Chen's deployment of bear spray was textbook perfect, a direct hit to the animal's face from optimal range. The chemical deterrent had its intended effect, causing the bear to recoil and shake its massive head. But instead of retreating, the animal's discomfort seemed to increase its aggression. The bear's charge was swift and devastating. Dr. Chen threw herself sideways as 300 pounds of predatory fury crashed through the space where she had been standing. The animal's momentum carried it past her, but its massive paw caught her shoulder, spinning her around and sending her crashing into her research equipment. The impact drove the air from her lungs and sent waves of pain through her ribs, but she managed to deploy a second blast of bear spray as the animal turned back toward her. This time, the chemical deterrent was enough to convince the bear that the encounter had become too costly to continue. The animal retreated to the edge of her campsite, but did not leave the island entirely. For the rest of the night, Dr. Chen could hear it moving through the forest just beyond the range of her flashlight, a constant reminder that she remained in the territory of a predator that had already demonstrated its willingness to attack. At first light, she packed her equipment and paddled off the island, abandoning her research site to a bear that had fundamentally altered the dynamics of human presence in this wilderness area. Her injuries were painful, but not life-threatening. Bruised ribs, deep scratches on her shoulder, and trauma that would affect her ability to conduct solo research for years to come. The incident report she filed with park officials described behavior that was unprecedented in her decade of Boundary Waters research. The bear had shown no fear of humans and had actively investigated her presence with the kind of persistence that suggested either starvation or a dangerous shift in behavioral patterns. Wildlife officials conducted an investigation but found no trace of the bear responsible for the attack. The animal had vanished into the vast wilderness of the Boundary Waters, where it could continue to pose a threat to other researchers and campers who might choose the same island for their wilderness experiences. Dr. Chen's encounter became part of a growing body of evidence that black bear behavior was changing throughout the upper Midwest. The animals were becoming more aggressive, more willing to approach human settlements, and less likely to retreat when confronted by people. Her research on that island was never completed. The data she had been collecting lost to a predator that recognized no scientific purpose or conservation value. The bear that had driven her away continued its existence in the Boundary Waters according to instincts that had been refined over millions of years, unaware of the human knowledge it had prevented from being gathered. The wilderness that had been the scene of her attack remained as beautiful and dangerous as ever, continuing to attract researchers and outdoor enthusiasts despite the recent violence. But for Dr. Chen, the encounter had revealed the true nature of her relationship with the predators that shared these wild spaces. She was not an observer, but a potential victim, subject to the same laws of survival that governed every other creature in the forest. 4 months after Dr. Chen's terrifying night on Knife Lake, a family camping trip in Michigan's Upper Peninsula would demonstrate that black bears were expanding their aggressive behavior throughout the Great Lakes region, bringing predatory violence to areas where such encounters had been virtually unknown. The Kowalski family had been planning their camping trip to Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore for over a year. Mark and Jennifer Kowalski, both teachers from Grand Rapids, had brought their 3 children, Tyler, 15, Madison, 13, and little Emma, just 7 years old, for what they hoped would be a memorable introduction to wilderness camping. They had reserved a backcountry campsite along the Lake Superior shoreline, choosing a location that offered both spectacular views and what they believed was relative safety from wildlife encounters. The area was known for its scenic beauty rather than dangerous predators, and the family felt confident in their ability to handle whatever challenges the wilderness might present. Their first 2 days had been perfect. Clear skies, calm waters, and abundant opportunities for hiking and photography. The children had embraced the outdoor experience with enthusiasm, collecting interesting rocks and learning to identify local plant species. Mark and Jennifer felt vindicated in their decision to expose their family to the natural world beyond suburban comfort zones. The bear appeared on their third evening, emerging from the dense forest that bordered their campsite just as the family was preparing dinner. The animal was massive, easily the largest black bear any of them had ever seen, and it showed no fear of the humans who had invaded its territory. Jennifer's first instinct was to gather the children close to her while Mark assessed the situation. They had read about proper behavior during bear encounters, understanding that they should appear large, make noise, and slowly retreat while giving the animal plenty of space to leave the area. But this bear seemed uninterested in leaving. It approached their campsite with the confident stride of a predator that had no natural enemies in this environment, its massive head swinging as it investigated the sense of human food and activity. Mark's attempt to scare the bear away by shouting and banging pots together had no effect. The animal continued its approach, now focusing on their food storage area where they had secured their supplies according to park regulations. The bear's investigation quickly became destructive as it tore through their equipment with claws designed to strip bark from trees. When 7-year-old Emma began crying in fear, the bear's attention shifted from food to the sound of distress. The animal's massive head turned toward the family, its black eyes reflecting the light from their campfire as it assessed these new sources of interest. The bear's approach toward the children triggered every parental instinct Mark possessed. He positioned himself between his family and the predator, knowing he had no chance of physically overpowering an animal that outweighed him by more than 100 pounds, but unable to stand by while his children faced danger. Jennifer's deployment of their bear spray came at the crucial moment, just as the animal was closing the final distance to their huddled family. The chemical deterrent hit the bear directly in the face, causing it to recoil and shake its massive head in obvious discomfort. But instead of retreating, the bear's reaction to the spray seemed to increase its aggression. The animal charged toward Mark with explosive speed, its massive paws thundering against the forest floor as it closed the distance between them. Mark's desperate dive to the side saved his life, but left him sprawled on the ground as 300 pounds of predatory fury crashed past him. The bear's momentum carried it beyond the family, but its massive claws raked across Mark's back as it passed, opening deep wounds that bled freely onto the forest floor. The animal's attention immediately returned to the family, but Jennifer's second deployment of bear spray was more effective than the first. The concentrated chemical cloud enveloped the bear's head, finally convincing it that the encounter had become too costly to continue. The bear retreated into the forest, leaving behind a scene of destruction that would traumatize the Kowalski family for years to come. Mark's injuries were severe, but not life-threatening, requiring emergency evacuation by park rangers and medical treatment that kept him hospitalized for 3 days. The children's psychological trauma was harder to treat than their father's physical wounds. 7-year-old Emma developed a persistent fear of outdoor spaces that required months of therapy to overcome. The family's introduction to wilderness camping had become a lesson in their true position within nature's hierarchy. Park officials conducted an extensive search for the bear responsible for the attack, using tracking dogs and aerial surveillance to locate an animal that had demonstrated dangerous aggression toward humans. The bear was never found, having disappeared into the vast wilderness of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, where it could continue to pose a threat to other campers. The incident forced park managers to reassess their policies regarding backcountry camping in areas where black bear populations were expanding. The attack had occurred in a location that was considered relatively safe, challenging assumptions about where dangerous encounters might occur. The Kowalski family's experience became part of a growing pattern of black bear aggression throughout the Great Lakes region. Wildlife officials struggled to explain the sudden increase in attacks, noting that such incidents had been virtually unknown in these areas just a few years earlier. Climate change, habitat loss, and changing food sources were all cited as potential factors in the shifting behavior patterns of black bears throughout the Midwest. The animals were being forced into closer contact with humans as their traditional territories were altered by environmental changes and development pressure. The bear that attacked the Kowalski family remained somewhere in Michigan's wilderness, its behavior having crossed a line that made it dangerous to any humans who might encounter it in the future. The animal continued its existence according to instincts that recognized no human authority or conservation purpose. Mark Kowalski's recovery took months, but his family's relationship with wilderness areas was permanently altered by their brief encounter with a predator that had shattered their assumptions about safety in natural settings. Their camping equipment remained unused in their garage, a reminder of how quickly outdoor recreation could transform into a fight for survival. The wilderness areas of the Great Lakes region continued to attract millions of visitors each year, but the increasing frequency of bear attacks was forcing a fundamental reassessment of the risks involved in wilderness recreation. The bears that inhabited these forests were no longer the shy, reclusive animals that previous generations had encountered. They were becoming bolder, more aggressive, and more willing to challenge human presence in areas they considered their territory. These stories of escalating black bear aggression throughout the upper Midwest reveal a disturbing pattern of predatory behavior that is transforming wilderness recreation across an entire region. From Karen Fry's brutal attack outside her Wisconsin home to the Kowalski family's terrifying encounter in Michigan's backcountry, each incident demonstrates that black bears are becoming increasingly bold and dangerous in their interactions with humans. The bears stalking the forests of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan are no longer the timid scavengers that previous generations learned to coexist with. They are confident predators that view human settlements and recreation areas as extensions of their own territory. Whether driven by habitat loss, climate change, or simple population pressure, these animals are crossing behavioral boundaries that were once considered absolute, bringing predatory violence to communities that had never before experienced such encounters. If these shocking accounts of black bear attacks across America's heartland left you questioning the safety of your own backyard, hit that like button and subscribe for more harrowing tales of when wildlife turns deadly in unexpected places.
I was attacked by a bear.
You were attacked by a bear?
Yes.
Do you need an ambulance?
I need something. I'm bleeding and my dog is missing.
Each week, we document the most terrifying encounters between humans and predators that are expanding their ranges into areas once considered safe, revealing how quickly a peaceful evening at home can transform into a desperate fight for survival. Because as these bears continue to lose their fear of humans and expand into suburban areas, understanding their deadly potential could mean the difference between a normal day and becoming another victim of nature's most unpredictable killers. The families who survived these vicious encounters learned that America's wilderness was reclaiming territory according to rules written in blood and enforced by creatures that recognized no human boundary, leaving behind scars that would serve as permanent reminders of humanity's fragile place in the natural order.